Welcome back to Dis Media, a startup story, the podcast where I take you along our journey of starting Dis Media from the ground up. You get to hear all about our challenges and accomplishments as we either grow Dis Media or go bust. Either way, you're going to have a front row seat to hear it all. And along the way, we're going to have some special guests who share with us their wisdom and insights and what helped them along their startup journey to success. So get ready as we get into it and try to help those get better at what they do. Welcome back, everybody, to Dis Media, a startup story, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of starting Dis Media from the ground up and doing a business, being an entrepreneur, starting something from scratch, especially when you're doing other things as well. Because I think a lot of people who venture off, sometimes they do it as a passion project, and sometimes they're doing it to get out of what they're doing. I've talked a little bit about that in the past, and it's not necessarily my goal. Not unhappy with what I do, just have idle hands. And so like to continue to be creative. But, a big part of business is ensuring that we kind of feed the human soul on a lot of different fronts. And this is something that I really love about our next guest, who works with entrepreneurs on a regular basis, dives into, kind of this human side of business, focuses on what it is to be a good leader, a good worker, be part of a humanistic, purpose-driven organization, and love a lot of the stuff that I've taken a look at. So I want to introduce everybody to Joel Bein. Joel, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time and dropping in, pulling wisdom and insights from people. I think is an important part of this process of being an entrepreneur, just to, if for nothing else, to know that you're not the only one out there maybe feeling these feelings and struggling through this stuff. One of the things I like to do when we first bring people on, there's a lot you have going on. There's a lot that you're working on, and we're definitely going to get to that. But I want to start with the start of your journey. You currently have a newsletter out there. You run a business, you work with entrepreneurs. Where did all this come from? Where did this start, and what set you on this path?
Yeah, I think it's always been about authenticity and aliveness and this desire to fully express who I am. And with that comes that purpose-driven, passion-driven gumption and audacity and determination. For me, I love to come alive by helping people come alive. And I've really just tapped into the zest and the curiosity, these different sort of energies or feelings, and we can describe it in different ways. But I think I've always kind of had that. Like my first zest was obsession with baseball when I was a kid. And then that sort of diving deep into one thing. And then the next thing was diving deep into becoming a classical musician. So that's like my first career, and just completely immersing myself in my art form and pouring my emotions and passion into that purpose and drive. But then that curiosity I kept feeding that. I think there's sort of the passion side, the sort of right brain side, and then there's a left brain side. The left brain side is asking why. It's asking why. And that's what a little child does, right? A little child's 3-year-old kid is asking, why is the sky blue? And is insatiable in the thirst for knowledge and understanding. And so I very much love that spirit and like rekindling that. And I've sort of rekindled that around age 19, just going back to that fundamental question of why and who, what, when, where, why, how, all the questions, like how does this world work? What's the root cause of some of the issues in our culture? Asking a lot of these big questions, asking a lot of questions about how we treat children, how do we educate children, and how does that connect to how we create careers? Like all these questions. How does that affect the business world, right? So that kind of ties it back in, where it's like, for me, it's been a big journey of personal development and inner healing and letting go of a lot of walls in my psyche that I developed as a child growing up in a less than functional household. But, you know, doing that self development and so forth, and seeking to live with purpose, to say, how can I create in my own sphere of control the world that I want to see that's fully flourishing and healthy and kind of has both left brain and right brain. And so, yeah, I see right now a lot of people in entrepreneurship, in business, struggling with these mean voices in our heads, right? And the self-doubt, anxiety, burnout, imposter syndrome. There's all sorts of different words we can put on this. But I'm always like, what's the foundation of that? Where did that
Yeah,
all come
where did
from?
that come
What is
from?
this inner critic, right? Everyone says, like, let's do some meditation, or let's do some journaling, or let's do some different self-care activities, which I do myself. I love all those. And it seems though often it's like, well, we have these inner critics, so we need to find ways to like calm down and try to quiet that temporarily, at least, to get by. And I'm interested in what is the actual root cause of the voice in our heads to begin with. I'm not sure many people are asking that
Yeah.
question. So I've gotten really curious about that. And I've actually cultivated an approach to disarm that voice permanently. And so that's what I'm really interested in now with my business. But I want people to be free and alive and healthy and whole and happy. And I believe we can have all of those while we're creating our companies. I believe that there's a paradigm shift that is just starting to, where it's like this whole thing of, well, it's just going to be the grind. You're going to have the startup life. You just got to push through it. And that's the way we do it. And it's like, well, again, why? Why couldn't we actually have a paradigm where we still do the things that we need to do to build the company, to create the value? But what if that were in alignment with who we are and our joy, and we could actually build in that from that place? So that's like my bigger vision. So those are the few different elements of my story.
Yeah. Well, I've shared this before. One of the reasons that I went to pursue a PhD is because I was asking myself, how do you make people happy? Because working in an organization, you have people with a lot of different emotions, feelings, a lot of different desires. And something I noticed was that despite the fact that you get burned out, you get fatigued, you get stressed out, but at the end of the day, my overarching feeling was like, loved what I did and happy with it. But why was what's going on with other people? And so I went and I asked senior leaders and I was like, how do you make people happy? And I heard people say things like, well, why do you care? Why does it matter? If it is really not of your concern, don't worry about that. Focus on the business, focus on the numbers, focus on the output. And, not necessarily satisfying answers. So I went on this exploration around positive psychology, around understanding people and how people translate emotion in the workplace. Um, at the end of the day, I have to say, I don't necessarily know that I came up with a really good answer. But I kind of boil it down to the fact that in an organization, a company thrives, a company exists for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is revenue, profitability, and sustainability. They have to exist another day. Otherwise, they don't exist at all. And that's very extrinsically driven, right? That's not something of a human emotion. People exist because they want to live, not only have those things, but also have inspiration and motivation and engagement. And the things that motivate us and engage us are so different, right? For all kinds of different people. And satisfying the needs of the business, satisfying the needs of the individual with the reality that there's a confluence of emotions in there, and everybody's motivated by something different. Everybody wants something different out of what they're doing. And business owners, managers, and leaders, they're left to try and figure it all out. I think is one of the things that really kind of lead to the dynamic of all of this emotion and all of these feelings in business. It's hard. I mean, it's satisfying all of that is a challenge. And what I love about your backstory is you started out on this path of music, and I'm sure you still a part of your life. I don't think you ever get rid of that, right? But it's a very creative thing. And you moved your way all the way up to being the art director for New Orleans Chamber Players. I'm curious, as you moved into that leadership role in an artistic form, is this where you started to get maybe a little bit of exposure to the demands? Because as an organization, you've got to fill seats, you got to be concerned about revenue and things, the organization existing, right? Being in a position of doing things to satisfy those that are going to engage with the organization and sponsor it and be a part of it, but also be artistic. How do you operate in those two worlds?
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't really thought about that too much in terms of that organization. I mean, that was my first sort of venture as a founder and starting that thing from scratch in 2018. It's still a small organization, but it's definitely established itself, and it's I think the broader piece here again, it's that yin yang, right? Of what you said is profit and then people. And I'm super interested in integrating that together. And then we're going to,
How do you do
right,
both,
right.
right?
Or like from the art standpoint, like let's have a functioning organization that's bringing in donors, grants, ticket sales, and just having a functional administration and all that left brain stuff. And it's so we can have spine chilling art music, right brain experiences. Like I'm really interested in that integration, that tightrope, the sort of walk the tightrope between order and chaos. And I believe it's actually when we have, I was reminded of this the other day. I was thinking about it. I thought about it a lot, but just the idea that order actually breeds creativity. And so when we have the left brain side established, if the chef in the kitchen has a clean kitchen and everything's in the right place and he knows where the spices are and he has all the ingredients and functioning appliances, and now his creativity is freed because all that's in place. And now let's create this masterpiece that is ineffable creative masterpiece of a meal in this clean kitchen, right? And so I think it's interesting to think about that and the different that yin yang there. And with business, I mean, yeah, I think that's been the bias in the culture for the past couple centuries, perhaps, is it's like it's all about profit. It's all about profit. And then other people will be like, in the culture will be like, business is bad and profit is bad and it's just about people. So stop. You just care about money and greed. And I'm making a caricature out of it, but I think it's useful.
Yeah, sure.
So I think there's like a little bit of subtext here. I know I've heard John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, he's talked about this sort of undercurrent of profit versus people that seems to be in American culture, or historically even, sort of like business versus academics. And you could probably speak to that too. And I know I can, because I've been in all these worlds. I've been in public sector, private sector, nonprofit. But yeah, I mean, the idea of it's either profit or people. And I'm like a both and guy. Why not both? And actually, it seems the organizations that are investing in their people and investing in emotional intelligence, investing in supporting the person's personal growth and happiness, intrinsic motivation, right? And not just like this old paradigm of punishments and rewards and carrots and sticks and performance incentives and cog in a wheel, like just do the tasks and it's not about your feelings, right? Right. If we actually nurture the whole person while still ensuring the bottom line, because we do need the bottom line to continue to sustain, right? So we don't need to ignore that. And it's kind of bringing that together. And so that's the kind of direction that I would love to see cultivate, and that I would like to think that I'm contributing towards by working with entrepreneurs directly on their blocks, directly on their own self-doubt, anxiety, all these things that are at their roots from oftentimes from childhood, that are contributing to the fear, that are contributing to the the fear of failure, or the imposter syndrome, and the resistance, and the burnout, or even just the lack of ability to trust colleagues, right? So if you have a control thing, then it's harder maybe to allow a colleague to just have the autonomy that that colleague wants, that craves. That's their humanity, right? They want to have creative freedom. They want to have decision-making power, like efficacy, freedom, and they don't want to just be following directions. They want to have creative fulfillment. But then that means you need to kind of give them space. If you have a trust thing and a control thing, distrust and control, if it's coming from fear, then it's harder to nurture that person's autonomy as a leader. So all this stuff's very interesting, how it all flows together.
Yeah, there's a number of things that you mentioned there that really things that I've thought about a lot myself, and something that I've found myself saying more than a few times lately is that, in an organization, all of the investment in training and education, all of the investment in figuring out what motivates and all of that, those are the benefits of profit. Until you get to profitability, the first thing that people are more concerned with is, how do I get to profitability? Right. And so, and I'm not saying that has to be like 100% the thing, but it tends to be the major focus. And I think depending upon where people maybe are in satisfying their needs, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you've got safety and security, and you build your social circle and you build your emotional connections, and then you work your way up to self-actualization. And I think in business, people are in different paradigms, like in your career. And if you think about that pyramid in the way of a career, and I always say people move up and down that pyramid all the time. At the top is self-actualization. That's when things are going great. But then, there's change, competition, technology, a major job force happens and it knocks you all the way down or a couple levels down. You got to build yourself back up. Depending upon where you are in your career and how comfortable you are in things, I think really kind of creates that set point for the moment of where you are, what you can focus on. And you could have one person in the organization where they've saved money, they've aren't really concerned about finances at home, they have a great relationship and everything's fine. And then their colleague, same job title, maybe got into a situation or two where finances are not as great, they're not in a great relationship, and so emotionally they come to work in two different places doing the same thing. And I don't know that organizations can really solve that problem. People bring the humanity to organizations, right? Organizations in and of themselves aren't emotional things. We bring that. So, and going back to, I think, the point that you're making about why we've got to be good leaders, why we can't be so numbers and results driven that we don't think about how that approach is affecting people in the organization. I've certainly worked for leaders who are so numbers driven, so data driven, so focused on the bottom line that, there's a disconnect between what they want to see in business results versus what they're getting from, people results, right? Tends to be more churn, more stress, more burnout, all of that stuff. It's a complicated problem. But, I'm curious, like with the entrepreneurs that you've worked with, one thing that I've learned in just doing some business consulting myself is that people come in at all different levels. I think what's interesting about working with entrepreneurs is they're oftentimes very good at a very focused level of things. Usually the thing that started their business in the first place, they're fantastic at. But then there's these other elements of running a business that are a little bit more challenging to them, that bring in the stress and the burnout and everything else. What have you experienced in the work that you've done with that? And how have you been able to help people kind of push through?
Yeah, well, on that last phrase, actually, the whole thing I'm doing is helping people let go of pushing through, where we're letting go of the emergency brake that's been up while you're stepping on the gas pedal. So if you have all this resistance internally because you have beliefs about money, you have beliefs about business, you have beliefs about yourself that are creating resistance. If you believe that I'm not good enough is true at the subconscious level, like this is the most core limiting belief on the planet that so many people have. It's this idea that's filtering your entire reality. Again, it's not a conscious thing, but if you have something that's stuck on from 20 years ago in your psyche, like you see your psyche as this family of the system of different parts of yourself. If anyone's seen the movie Inside Out, Disney Pixar movie, it's a beautiful introduction to actually how the psyche, a beautiful model for how the psyche actually works, which we have different parts of ourselves that have different emotions that oftentimes will get in conflict with each other and so forth. And so when we have parts of ourselves that believe, and actually in the movie Inside Out 2 really shows this really well, is how the beliefs themselves are creating the turmoil and the creating the anxiety, creating the issues. So yeah, I'll just flow with that metaphor because like literally in that second movie, there's this character that's representative of the girl's psyche. She's so this character's name is anxiety, right? So she's the part of the psyche that's anxiety. And this is directly related to this belief that we see, I'm not good enough, that we see Riley create. Riley is the 11-year-old girl that has these different parts of herself. And so that's where I go deep into the depths of the psyche to pull out these weeds. I just was on a call with a client a couple hours ago, and it was unbelievable to see because she had a lot of sort of blocks around, based on her upbringing, around like conforming to the expectations of others, right? And not feeling fully free to just go and create her exciting business that she's just getting off the ground, because she's also involved in this other business that she's not as excited about. But then she has some of this like these old obsolete resistance points around, being sort of sacrificial towards others and getting the approval of others, right? So then that's creating this resistance towards her following her highest excitement, right? So we pulled out a big belief that she had. And, one of the beliefs we pulled out is like the way to get love is to get approval. Like this is a story that's actually the root cause of negative emotions, negative thoughts, and negative actions. And so we actually pull this thing out with this really innovative approach, and then it's gone forever. It's an amazing approach. And so that part of the psyche is then liberated, and then we don't have these negative thoughts and emotions and actions, right? So an analogy is like if you believe that dogs are dangerous because when you were 10 you had an experience with a dog where you got bit or something. It could have been a mild thing or a severe thing. You could actually have created a belief in your subconscious that dogs are dangerous. And then 20 years later, you might not actually think every dog is dangerous consciously, but you might have some anxiety that comes up subconsciously, involuntarily, every time you see a dog. And so that's kind of the root. That's kind of the root is the belief level. And so it's these beliefs that I'm interested in connecting and getting curious about. What are the actual root weeds, if you will, in the psyche that are directly causing entrepreneurs different symptoms, right? Whether it's like you're staying up and you can't sleep because you're just afraid of not making payroll, right? Is that just because the business situation, or is it because you have fear of failure, right? Where does that fear actually come from? So I actually believe that almost all of the negative emotions we have are just about our internal world. They're not about our circumstances. So that's a little bit of a window into it.
So your newsletter that you focus on human liberation, is for those who may not. Part of the reason we want to talk about this is because want to understand, like, people who are seeking that kind of knowledge, that insight, because I personally think that there's a lot of people out there who do want to understand this more deeply. I had a conversation recently on a previous show about that emptiness that we get. We move to achieving all of these things in our careers and the title and the salary, but then the focus of that kind of leaves this hole, this emptiness. In your newsletter, are these things that you touch on? Are these things that you expand on there?
Yeah, the newsletter is just supporting all of what I'm sharing about the business's purpose, which is helping entrepreneurs end these patterns of self-doubt and so forth. So I work with people one-on-one in a 12-week program, and we just identify those different patterns in one's life, and we find those beliefs, and we just kind of clear beliefs, and we watch these patterns dissolve permanently over the course of 12 weeks. And so the newsletter is sharing different angles into that, right? Helping people see, I wrote a newsletter recently, and I did a podcast about this as well. I think I sent you, specifically about founders and entrepreneurs, and this idea that I was questioning in the newsletter, this idea of that entrepreneurship has to be hard. And basically that is a belief in and of itself. So business is hard, entrepreneurship is hard, making money is hard. These are stories, right? They're just concepts, and we hear them all the time in our culture, right? But just because it's normal doesn't mean it's true. Just because it's popular doesn't mean it's true. Actually, objectively, philosophically. So I'm a very philosophical dude. That's how I'm drawn to this work. It's like, is it actually true, right? What's interesting about the method that I employ is helping people recognize, helping that part of the psyche recognize that this limiting belief never occurred in sense data, in sort of the physical reality. It was like, all we have is we have our eyes, and we have our ears, and we have our feelings, and we like sense things, right? But then we have our mind, and we make meaning about stuff, right? And so I think a whole bunch of people have assumed that it's the truth. Entrepreneurship has to be hard. And I'm not saying that it's never hard. What I help people liberate them from are the involuntary assumptions, right? So if you believe subconsciously that dogs are dangerous, you have an involuntary response when you see the dog. That's going to be a fear, anxiety, right? So if you already just believe deep down, because maybe you just absorbed it from media, or maybe your dad was an entrepreneur and he was like grinding, and you saw that day in, day out, and you just created this story, and that got kind of tucked away in your psyche, and you just assume entrepreneurship is hard. And this is like this program that's kind of up on your mental operating system, taking up mental RAM, and it's filtering your reality. So that every time you go into your business life, you have this idea: business is hard, entrepreneurship is hard. It's just filtering your entire experience, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you constantly believe it, you're going to make it hard. That's pretty incontrovertible. And so I help liberate people from all sorts of beliefs, but that's a set that I was talking about in the newsletter, about like the meta level around business itself. And I actually believe that business can be playful, business can be fun, business can be alive, creative, dynamic, all sorts of different things. I'm not saying that it won't be hard. Like if you're trying to build a business and you just don't have a good marketing plan, and you keep doing the same thing over and over without changing it, then it's going to be hard. So we're just letting go of these absolute ideas so that we can have freedom. Some dogs are dangerous, but not all dogs are dangerous in all situations. So we let go of the
Right.
assumption that's in our subconscious that's filtering our reality and creating negative thoughts and emotions and so forth. Then we just feel better. We feel lighter. We feel freer. We feel clear in our head. The inner critic is going away. These more enjoyable frequencies in what we're feeling, and we can actually just like maybe approach business with curiosity and creativity and empowerment and collaboration and all these good things. And maybe we could actually feel good while we're creating our business. That's sort of the new paradigm I'm talking about, right?
Self-limiting belief is a powerful thing. You know, as you're kind of talking about that, one of the things that we try to do, even at the daily pitch. So our mantra is helping managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what they do, and democratizing business information. So a lot of things that I tend to write about, put out there on the website, there are things that you get exposed to when you work for big companies and you go to, big company training sessions and management and leadership training sessions. And if you're a smaller entrepreneur, you don't necessarily get exposed to those things. A lot of times because of budget, sometimes just because you're just not aware. But it's really kind of breaking through that and bringing that down to, down to everybody. Like the whole idea is to make business information and insight, the things that people use when they are managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs, make it more open to, for nothing else, to let people know, like I mentioned earlier, that it's not just you,
Yeah.
like other people have these questions. But, that what you talk about, those self-limiting beliefs, this belief that entrepreneurism is hard, that business is hard or difficult. I remember years ago, I used to volunteer for an organization, kind of this affinity group that I worked with, and we'd go to elementary school once a year, talk to students. And I remember we were having a conversation one time, and we were in, it's a little bit more of an inner city school, a lot of multiple language spoken in the school, and we were talking about our jobs. It was a kind of a career thing, like let's expose people to, the possibilities of life kind of thing. And in the preparation, one of the people were talking, they said, it's really important that we let people know that, business is an accessible thing, because some of the students have this perception that, like, if you ask them what they want to do, they'll say, a doctor or a lawyer. But if you ask them about, whether or not you want to be in business or own a business, they'll say, "Oh, no, that's too hard. That's too difficult." Like, how is it that you see being a doctor or a lawyer less difficult than just owning a business? And so it's crazy. It's like that gets embedded in people sometimes from a very early age. And, part of the reason that I even do what I do is because, like, I didn't come from this background. Like my family didn't have a background in entrepreneurism or business or anything like that. This is all learned skill. And I'm just of the belief that, what, anybody can do it. Anybody. A business is the easiest thing to start, but a difficult thing to maintain and make a go of it. How do you keep that motivation up and those negative thoughts from entering your head and poisoning your perception of things? I think that's one of the things I liked about, even, because I was listening to the podcast you're talking about, episode 64, I believe it was. That whole topic that you were getting into is beneficial. Folks, go check out Joel Bein podcast, the Joel Bein show. Pardon me, it is a podcast. I think it was episode 64,
Sounds right.
if I had that correct. But definitely go check that out. That is a good one. It's a good exploration into a lot of that. So you've been working with people, working them through their process to kind of shed these perceptions, these negative thoughts, and that. What is the biggest thing, or maybe something significant that you can think about, that you've learned through the process of doing this?
Well, one way I would answer that is to trust myself in becoming increasingly curious with a client about the roots, because what really matters is that you liberate people from the most important beliefs. Because like I said, the technique I employ, which is absolutely second to none in my biased opinion, as I say, um, you can take I'm not good enough. You can take beliefs about money, and even beliefs about like working, like beliefs that work has to be hard, or I'm not working enough. Like these can be stories that are stuck in the subconscious, and they're contributing to people's suffering. And so there's a lot of core beliefs that are really obviously core beliefs that need to be liberated. Um, but I always want to make sure that I keep asking people questions to learn about their particular situation, to get even deeper. Because you could clear any belief. Like I literally cleared a belief for myself. I hate laser tag. That was the belief. I hate laser tag because when I was like 12, we played laser tag, and I slipped and like jammed my finger, and then I was losing, and I just total failure, and I just didn't enjoy it. And it was sort of an adverse experience and relatively mild, but like then I just created this belief, I hate laser tag, and it was kind of all the emotions were stuck in association with laser tag. And so then I I've happened to come across, when I was reflecting, 20 years later on this, like I found this belief, and I used this method to fully clear it. And then now I don't have that belief. It doesn't feel like any emotional charge anymore. But it's much more valuable to find beliefs for people that are way more root striking, beliefs about love, about safety, love, and belonging, and these core beliefs that could be driving the show. So, I mean, just to give more of a story, an example, I had a client that she was pretty successful YouTube channel, and she was monetizing that and had a few thousand subscribers, and she was talking about makeup. Actually, it was like kind of her passion, but she just came to me because she was just feeling all this anxiety all the time, and it was like 10 out of 10, all this anxiety. And it was stopping her from feeling just free to be expressive on her videos. She felt really guarded and tense. And then she would procrastinate sometimes on videos and creating videos. But she was kind of walking around with a lot of anxiety and tension. And so then we identified that pattern, but then we just got to it and finding the beliefs that are causing that. And it's not beliefs about videos and YouTube. It was beliefs about being seen and being safe to express my full self. And so it's going down and getting curious and finding, okay, so you're having this anxiety. Can we learn more about that? Like, what's going on? What does that part of you want to tell us? Trying to learn more, and then keep asking until we get to, oh wait, it's really about safety here in this. Okay. And so then we find that really it takes a few minutes to ask extra questions to get to that real root striking belief. But then boom, and then we run the process in about 10 minutes. It's absolutely incredible. I've done live demos of this on my podcast as well. People want to hear it, and on my website. But she's just liberated from a belief like that in 10 minutes, and she's all the emotional charge is gone, and it never comes back. And so we're just doing that. She just shows up an hour a week, and we're clearing 4, 5, 6 beliefs a week, and she has these major breakthroughs every week. And then by the end of the 12 weeks, she's like, yeah, I'm basically zero anxiety. She's like, I'm kind of blown away. And so, yeah, it's just been what I've learned, to tie it back to your question, is what I've learned is the patience to when I'm talking with a client about what is it that is actually the main cause of your particular situation, I can just cultivating the patience and the curiosity and the wisdom to just keep probing until we hit that moment where it's like, oh yeah, that's the belief that feels true. Like it's not safe to be seen, and then you feel like the client feels that, and then we have something that's worth that's a high ROI, to use business phrase, to pull out that belief, pull out that big weed from the mental garden, as I say.
Nice. Well, Joel, I think the work that you're doing, this is something that I think a lot of people can benefit from. There's always things in our past that kind of creep up. It defines how we are motivated, how we engage, how we perceive things to the degree that we compete in the workplace. It kind of defines a lot of that stuff. And to your point, it does creep into a lot of people's approach to business, how they perceive it, how they work with other people. I think the focus that you provide in helping people get past some of these limitations, or these things that are kind of holding them back from being the kind of people that they want to be, to better fulfill that positive element in business. All of that stuff is great. I often say a business degree is a life degree. You're always going to use it throughout your life, no matter what you're doing. I think that's very true of lessons like this, like just understanding yourself, understanding what your limitations are. Because I think a lot of times, and what's fascinating about this work that you do is that you help people uncover maybe things that they weren't even aware are holding them back or creating a perception in their mind. And you're kind of giving people the ability to recognize that, label it. Once we can shine a light on it, then we can manage it better. There's an old saying in business, what gets measured gets managed. So unless we understand what it is we're
Yeah.
dealing with, it's really kind of hard to, break free of it. So let me ask you this. If people are interested in connecting with you, connecting with the work that you do, where do we find you?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the website is thehumanliberation.co, and you can go there and you can apply to work with me, and we can hop on a call and learn more about what's alive for you. I think business world has gotten better the past couple decades with destigmatization of mental health, and so there's more people
Yes.
talking about it. I love seeing when people are on LinkedIn and they're actually sharing openly more of their stories about these things, and there's been more conversation. And that's like the first step is, as we know, the first step is to identify the issue and just acknowledge that it's there rather than hiding. But I think that's like the 20th century was more like, let's just hide and push this stuff down. And this century has been more like, hey, let's actually acknowledge this and try to support people. And I'm trying to go to the next iteration of that. And it's we're not just going to acknowledge that it's there. We're going to solve for it. We're actually going to solve for it and liberate you from these blocks. And people get frustrated, I think, with other approaches, like just trying to cope by doing, just reading books or going to a seminar, or even just doing traditional therapy where you might be talking about the problems, but are you solving them? And so if, people listening are actually kind of fed up with spinning their wheels when it comes to negative voices in your head, when it comes to anxiety and so forth, then yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful to connect with entrepreneurs and help them heal and be free, because I'm completely real when I say that, and I'm very, very confident that we get results that are actually permanent. And so yeah, thehumanliberation.co, and I would love to connect.
Awesome. Well, I think this is a really important topic for a lot of people. I think it's one of those things that really, helps people be, again, kind of going back to what I always talk about is like being better at what you do. I think when you can kind of clear those inhibitions and those limiters and better understand what you're managing. Just earlier today, I was teaching a class, and one of the things we talked about was Myers-Briggs and, the type indicator tests or assessments. I hate to say behavioral test because you don't fail a behavioral test. It's an assessment. But, one of the things I talk about is that when you better understand how you process information, what your go-to behaviors are, it helps you to better mitigate them when you're in a room full of people who aren't like you. And it helps you to identify how you could be coming across a particular way. It helps you better identify other people and their approach and their communication style. And, part of addressing our own kind of inhibitions, limitations, things that hold us back or promote us, part of that is just also understanding how other people operate, process information, and all of that. So to me, it's a great thing that you're doing. It's good work that you're doing. I think it's important that people, if you're stuck, speak up, reach out, identify that, don't let the pressures of society convince you that this is somehow a weakness, because it isn't. You can turn this into a tremendous strength. Well, Joel, I really appreciate your time and the wisdom that you've shared with us. I love it. If anybody is interested, please go check out the podcast, check out the website, sign up for the newsletter, because lots of good, insightful information there. And, reach out to Joel if you're interested, because he would be more than happy to engage with you.
Well, appreciate you having me, Ben, and grateful for your time as well, and your interest and willingness. Anyone who listens to my podcast, even just one episode, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so touched. Like, they actually heard my voice. Like, someone's actually listening. Okay. It's funny thing about podcasting is you don't always meet the people listening, right? So then when you meet someone who actually listened, you're like, oh my gosh, they heard me.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I'm always encouraging people. I'm like, just reach out, send us an email. I put our stuff on TikTok and YouTube and LinkedIn, and I put it in a lot of different places, and always encourage people to reach out. So if you hear this, you love it, engage it, even if it's just a thumbs up, and you're a little shy about putting some words down, don't worry about it. Just give a little acknowledgement that you hear it.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. If you've been listening, especially been listening to Ben's podcast for some time and you haven't reached out, then go like give him some acknowledgement and love and recognition, and just reach out and tell them what you liked about the podcast. And I think that's a really nice thing for everyone to experience when we express that gratitude. So, but yeah, thanks again for having me. And I just appreciate what you're doing genuinely for talking about the types of topics and all the topics around business, and supporting people in these different sort of buckets of what it takes to grow as a business leader and so forth. So keep it up, man.
Hey, we're all in it together, right? So I think it's a much better world if we support and encourage each other. Well, everybody, thank you guys for checking this out. Thank you for tuning into Disc Media Startup Story, and we will catch you next time. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to Disc Media, a Startup Story. This podcast was produced and edited by Ben Olmos and is a production of Disc Media Corporation. If you're interested in learning more about anything you heard on this episode, please reach out to us at podcast@discmedia.com. You can also get more information about this and other episodes, or information about our guests, by checking out dailypitch.news, our business and insights publication focused on helping managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what they do.